أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في القرآن الحكيم الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم صدق الله العظيم. The long verse which I have recited translates as follows. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. A likeness of his light is as a pillar on which is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass. The glass is like a brightly shining star, which is lit from a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western, whose oil gives light, even though fire does not touch it. It is light upon light. Allah guides to his light whom he pleases, and Allah sets forth examples for mankind, and Allah is the knower of all things. Chapter 24, An-Nūr, verse 35. At this time of the year, the days are naturally dark with reduced daylight hours, and daytime itself is often dull and overcast, as in fact it is at this moment. This is perhaps why great public displays of attractive and colorful artificial lights are set up to brighten the atmosphere and bring cheer to people. This verse of the Holy Quran occurs in a chapter the name of which is An-Nūr, or the light. It tells us about the importance of light by beginning with these words, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Of course, Allah cannot be light as such, because light is something which is a part of creation, and nothing in creation can be Allah. But in human languages, a person is often called by the name of a quality that he possesses, or the name of a function which he performs, when that quality or function is very closely associated with him. And there are many examples of this. There is a company called, I think it's a plumbing company, called Mr. Reliable, because it claims to be reliability itself. And in the Quran, there's a verse in which a person is called righteousness. Not just righteous, but righteousness, if he fulfills all the requirements of righteousness. And another person in the Holy Quran has been called a deed which is not good. That is what he is called. That person is a deed which is not good, as if he himself has become a bad deed himself. And the same applies to calling Allah as light here. It means provider of light, but He is such a unique and supreme provider of light, and providing light is so associated with Him that He can be called light. The meaning of the words Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth may be that He has created the sources of light in the heavens that we see and that we benefit from. In other words, mainly the sun, the moon, and the stars. Light of the heavens and light of the earth. He has provided in the earth the materials that we use to produce and create light, such as combustible materials which we can burn. Of course, these days the light we use is produced by electricity usually, and that is generated by the use of something in nature. We may also take the light of the heavens to mean the guidance that Allah has provided for us so that we can see the right path and the wrong path in that light and distinguish between them. And the light of the earth are the physical lights that we need wherever they come from the sun or artificial lights, the lights that we need in order to survive and live our daily lives. And regarding light for our guidance, the Holy Quran says in one place that a person whose heart Allah has opened to Islam so that he follows a light from his Lord, that person is not like those people whose hearts are hardened and do not open to receive this light. And that is chapter 39, verse 22. The next words of this verse are, after saying Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, the next words are a likeness of His light. And this removes any misimpression that Allah is the same as light. It says that He produces light. That is why it says a likeness of His light. And then it goes on to explain what His light is like. Now this point had to be clarified, that Allah is not light as such, because otherwise people might have thought that Allah was light and started worshipping lights. Already at the time when the Quran was revealed, there was widespread worship of the sun, the moon, and the stars. And people would be prone to misunderstanding this statement that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. So it's made clear here that it is His light that the verse is talking about, and it's illustrating it by an example or likeness. And it says here, a likeness of His light. Now the light it mentions is the light of guidance, because guidance is the main subject of the Holy Quran. But here I may digress to say that even as regards physical light, which we see all around us, scientists over the centuries have found it very difficult to find out exactly what is the nature of light. When we see a beam of light, is it like a shower of particles going along, like water from a tap or water from a shower? Or is light like a wave which is traveling through some material? Scientists have puzzled over this, and no one can really explain the nature of light in a way that humans can conceive and understand. Allah's light described here is the guidance that He has sent in the form of the revelation of the Quran. The Quran says in 3 places that along with his messenger, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah has sent a light along with him, which Muslims must believe in and follow. And that, of course, means the Quran. And in this verse, it gives a description of that light. The Quran, as it says here about Allah's light, is like a lamp placed on a high pillar from which its light radiates out to all the world. Now, it is a practice among many Muslims to place the Quran on a high shelf in their homes, well protected in a cover. But its light doesn't reach anyone. Allah says here that its light will reach everywhere. And the verse then says that this lamp which is giving out Allah's light, it is in a glass, and that glass is like a brightly shining star. And what this means is that the source of the light, what is producing the light, will be protected by a transparent glass. Now, interestingly, human-made lights also have to be in a transparent covering, as in a light bulb. Without that transparent covering, well, it has to be transparent so that the light comes out. But without that covering, the light might go out, or the light source might do damage by its heat unless there is a cover on it. And the words, the lamp is in a glass, mean that the Quran is protected by Allah so that its light cannot be extinguished or corrupted by something from outside. And its light is also, the Holy Quran is also protected against attacks upon its teachings. And while being protected, it is shining in the world like a bright star. And the Holy Quran says about itself in one place that this is a glorious Quran in a guarded tablet. And the words for guarded tablet are Lawh Mahfuz, chapter 85, verses 21 and 22. And there are various interpretations of what this Lawh Mahfuz is. But it's just a different way of saying the same thing about its protection. And for the protection of its teachings, and to make them shine in the world, Allah raises mujaddids and other servants of Islam and the Holy Quran. Now this lamp, this verse goes on to say, is lit from a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western, whose oil gives light, even though fire doesn't touch it. Even though you're not lighting the oil, it still gives light. Now, I read on a website about oil lamps that olive oil lamps, in other words, lamps which burn olive oil, are found everywhere at archaeological sites across the Mediterranean region. In other words, ancient civilizations were using olive oil lamps. And it goes on to say that it's not surprising that the most common oil used in the Mediterranean region was olive oil. So Allah here says to mankind that just as you use lamps fueled by olive oil, my light also comes from an olive tree. Now how is that? How does Allah's light come from an olive tree? Well, as you know, an olive branch is a symbol of peace. It was a symbol of peace among many nations from ancient times, like in the old and ancient Greek and Roman civilizations. In the Bible, from the time of Noah, Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam, this olive branch came to signify peace. And in the tradition of the Arabs also, the olive branch is a symbol of peace. So much so that in 1974, the Palestinian leader of that time, the famous Yasser Arafat, he brought an olive branch to the United Nations General Assembly, and he then brandished it and showed it during his speech. And our own British 50p coin, till a few years ago, it showed on one side the statue of a woman, and that woman's called Britannia. It stands for Britain. And she is holding out an olive branch. So the Holy Quran is lit from a blessed olive tree, meaning that it is based on peace and it offers peace to the world. And it is neither Eastern nor Western, as this verse says, but is meant for the whole world. The verse then says that the oil of this lamp gives light even without the oil being lit by any fire. Now, if we consider the sources of light which human beings have invented in this world, they all need to be lit by something. With the older sources of light, you lit a candle, or you lit the oil in an oil lamp, or the gas in a gas lamp, which used to be all over British cities, especially London, the old gas lamps in Victorian times, and that gas had to be lit by someone going round with a big stick. Now, in case of the older electric light bulbs, an electric current was used to heat up a thin metal strip filament to a high temperature, and that's when the filament produced light, when it was very hot. But of course it produced a lot of heat as well. And modern LED light bulbs, the ones we generally use these days, they also require an electric current to make them light up. But the Holy Quran gives its light without needing any heat to do so, and without producing any heat itself. Now, religious preachers, like not only Muslim ulama but in other religions as well, they often make emotionally charged speeches to their followers. Speeches which are full of fury, anger, their indignation, and full of exaggeration. And in these speeches, they also, apart from these speeches, indulge in heated arguments and hot debates with anyone who disagrees with them. The Holy Quran does not need its followers to present his message by means of anger, rage, and heat. It is its light which should be presented. Now, there is an expression in English you might have heard of, which says that a person, while trying to prove something, that person generated more heat than light. Now, I discovered that this expression, that someone generated more heat than light, it is actually used by judges in courts as well. When a judge dismisses an argument presented by a lawyer, and he uses this, that your argument generated more heat than light, to tell the lawyer that his argument is just an impassioned emotional statement, lacking any solid basis, clarity, or logic. And there is another common expression to describe what someone is saying. We say, it is just hot air, meaning that it is empty pretentious and boastful talk with no real substance. So the words of the Holy Quran produce light without heat. And the words of the Holy Quran don't need to be heated like the filament in an electric bulb. They don't need to be heated in order to display the light, that is, to display to other people the light which is within them. Then the verse goes on to describe Allah's light as light upon light, light on top of light, the Arabic for which is Nurun ala Nur. This means that it keeps on giving more and more light. So when we find some light in the Holy Quran on some point, that is not the end of the matter. Further thought and research will reveal more light. And the verse then goes on to say, light upon light, Allah guides to His light whom He pleases. Now this whom He pleases, which occurs in other places in the Quran, in other contexts, is rather misunderstood. Allah guides to His light whom He pleases doesn't mean that a person does nothing for himself, and if Allah happens to please, He will just guide that person without that person having done anything. And if Allah doesn't want to, He won't guide that person, no matter what that person does. But it doesn't mean that. Because the next verse, after this long verse that I've been explaining, the next verse tells us where that light is to be found. It says this light is in houses which Allah has allowed to be raised high and His name to be remembered within them. In those houses are people who glorify Allah in the mornings and in the evenings, and they do not let buying and selling or trading divert them from the remembrance of Allah and from the keeping up of prayer and the giving of the due zakat. This is chapter 24, verses 36 and 37. So according to this, the highest house is not the tallest one. It's not the most magnificent and the most imposing building. The highest house, the one which Allah has permitted to be raised high and exalted, it's the one within which the light of Allah enters, because those who live in it always remember Him, glorify Him, and do not let their worldly activities become a hindrance to remembering Allah in their hearts, and then praying to Him and giving their wealth for the help of others. So may Allah enable us to do whatever is necessary to receive His light into our homes and into our lives. Ameen. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'na wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun karimun malikun barurur rahim.